History, a premier and paramount priority for progress of a people, arguably the single most important cultural property. It is the great unifier of all societies, from classical to contemporary. It is the shining beacon that restores vision to the blind. It is imperative that we create a unified effort to learn from it, that we may emulate its successes and prevent repeating its mistakes. For without history, we are without purpose. We are without identity. Welcome to the gray area, where we examine history in hindsight. January 11th, 1693, Mount Etna in Sicily erupts with an estimated 7.4 magnitude earthquake, one of the most powerful earthquakes, as well as one of the most devastating volcanic eruptions, killing around 60,000 people. 1759, the first American life insurance company is incorporated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was known as the Philadelphia Contribution Ship, which was originally founded in 1752. What did they insure? Well, it started as a fire insurance company, and by the time it incorporated in 1759 on this very day, it provided slave insurance for slave owners. Its co-founder, Benjamin Franklin. 1775, plantation owner and English immigrant Francis Salvador becomes the first Jew elected to office in America, in South Carolina. He would die a year later as he joined the Revolutionary Call, and in 1776, he was the first Jew killed in the American Revolutionary War. 1861, Alabama secedes from the Union, one day after Florida secedes from the Union. 1923, French and Belgian troops occupy Ruhr in the North Rhine-Westphalia to collect reparations from Germany after World War I, which Germany had failed to pay. 1927, Louis B. Mayer, head of the film studio MGM, Meyer Goldwyn Mayer, announces creation of what would become the Academy Awards of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. 1935, Amelia Earhart flies from Honolulu to Oakland, California, non-stop. 1949 is the first time snowfall is recorded in Los Angeles. 1957, the African Convention is founded in Dakar. 1961, a race riot at the University of Georgia occurs when two black students, Hamilton Holmes and Charlene Hunter, entered the University of Georgia to register for classes, perpetrated by a white mob. 1986, the first African-American lieutenant governor since Reconstruction is sworn in. His name, Douglas Wilder of Virginia. 1988, U.S. Vice President George Bush met with representatives of independent counsel Lawrence E. Walsh to answer questions about the Iran-Contra affair, while just 3 years later on this very day, 1991, Congress gives that same Bush, who was then president, special unilateral powers to order an attack on Iraq, which would become known as Operation Desert Storm. But rewinding all the way back to 1943, U.S. and Britain are forced to relinquish extraterritorial rights in China. Why? China decided to get organized and declared an end to what was dubbed China's Century of Humiliation, which came during the midst of the Second Sino-Japanese War. You see, the beginning of the Century of Humiliation dated somewhere around the mid-19th century on the eve of the First Opium War, amidst widespread opium addiction and political unraveling of the Qing dynasty of China. That followed major events which were cited as a part of that century of humiliation, which included the defeat in the First Opium War between 1839 and 1842 by the UK, the unequal treaties, in particular Nanking, Whampoa, Algoon, and Shimonoseki, the Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864, the defeat in the Second Opium War between 1856 and 1860, and the sacking of the Old Summer Palace by British and French forces, the defeat in the Sino-French War between 1884 and 1885 by France, defeat in the First Sino-Japanese War between 1894 and 1895 by Japan, the Eight-Nation Alliance suppressing the Boxer Uprising between 1899 to 1901, the British invasion of Tibet between 1903 and 1904, the 21 Demands by Japan in 1915, the Japanese invasion of Manchuria between 1931 and 1932, and the Second Sino-Japanese War between 1937 and 1945. In this period, China suffered major internal fragmentation, lost almost all of the wars it ever participated in, and was often forced to give major humiliating concessions to the invaders from the West in the subsequent treaties. In many cases, China had been forced to pay large amounts of reparations to the invaders, open up ports of trade, lease or cede territories such as Outer Manchuria and parts of outer northwest China to the Russian Empire, Jiaozhou Bay to Germany, Hong Kong to Great Britain, Zhejiang to France, and Taiwan and Dalian to Japan, and make various other concessions of their own national sovereignty to foreign spheres of influence following these military defeats. However, it was during the Second Sino-Japanese War in 1943 when China began making ground against the Imperial Japanese and British with the help of the Soviet Union and the United States. In fact, this is one period in recent history that America and Russia actually agreed on anything in the midst of the Cold War, to which the three countries actually put aside their differences to put an end to a common threat, Imperial Japan. The US knew it couldn't hold on to its captured territories in China, with the Chinese rapidly unifying under General Mao Zedong and Commander Zhao Jiangyu. Both Russia and China had a vested interest to make China their trade partners in witnessing the remarkable manufacturing capabilities, and in exchange for assisting the Chinese with subduing the Imperial Japanese occupation in China, both Russia and the US become China's top trade partner, and the rest is history. However, it proves that even enemies have the capacity to put differences aside for higher aspirations. And when looking at China today, it proves that the indomitable spirit of human determination, drive, and force of will puts no goal or endeavor out of reach, not for very long. It is integral to note that both General Mao Zedong and Prime Minister Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam were heavily influenced by the esteemed and revered Most Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. General Mao Zedong used what he learned from revolutionary black nationalist ideology to transform his country into a competitive first world superpower. However, it forces one to think, when looking at China today, could that be the impetus for the continued racism in America? Could it be the inspiration for why pro-blackness, black nationalism, black first politics, identifying with lineage for black Americans is not only frowned on, but scoffed at, debased, and disparaged by the mainstream media, who also encourages its disparagement? Could it be a sign that if this is what China was able to do with your ideology, what do you think the world knows about you that you do not know of yourself or have yet to figure out? You see, history, much like time, waits for no man. It is ultimately up to us to decide whether we choose to make it or be the reason we repeat it. However, no matter what side of it that you stand on, you can only learn from it by looking at history in hindsight.